Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ross, affordability making the news again as home prices were announced as increasing again in many cities. Are things more affordable than they were a couple of years ago?
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? It all depends on where you are on the property ladder and what step you're going to make next. So, yeah, this nonsense about housing prices going up in the GTA or whatever that's been said over by the Realtors Association in Toronto. Or the price declines or non-declines that are being recorded in Vancouver. There is an overwhelming amount of misinformation that is out there for the public, which I think we have tried to repeat over and over again on the show for the last couple of years, Jim, related to affordability. So, yes, it's true. Right now, there are home buyers in the Vancouver market whose homes that they're purchasing will cost 50% less than what they would have cost to own in 2016. There are homes in the Greater Toronto area right now for those home buyers that is going to cost them 50% less than what they would have spent in 2017. These are simply the truth of a housing market. Now, what group of buyers are experiencing those kind of affordability improvements? Well, it isn't first-time buyers, because there were so few of them buying in 2016 in BC, in 2017 in Ontario, that their share of the sales was so small that they really are not, it really doesn't matter in terms of the affordability discussion, because, you're talking 20%, a historical low in the share of sales that was taking place in those two provinces at those two moments in time. In other words, for 80% of the home buyers, relative to 2016 in BC and 2017 in British Columbia, or 2016 in British Columbia, 2017 in Ontario, houses have gotten way more affordable. Now, let me explain to you who those 80% of the home buyers are. Traditionally, those 80% only make up about 60 to 70% of the market. That has only ever happened one time where their share dropped down to 20% and below, and that was at peak markets that we just discussed in British Columbia and Ontario years ago. But today, if you're a trade-up buyer, purchasing a $900,000 house in Vaughan, north of Toronto, or a $1.2 million property in Vancouver, single detached, you're purchasing a property at about a 30% discount in Vaughan and probably between a 30 and 40% discount in Vancouver. Now, it all depends on the quality of home that you're buying. In other words, if you're buying a property where the house is valued at less than 10% of the assessed value is the building, then, that's a different story. But for a habitable home that a family could move into in those price ranges, you're seeing a 30 to 40% reduction in the price you would have paid. Well, where does that money save? It's saved in the mortgage. So if you're spending $300,000 less on a property, you are already in a category of sale where you're carrying about over 50% down. So when you drop the mortgage that you're required to buy a house by $300,000, you effectively drop your mortgage cost in half. And for around 80% of the buyers in those two markets, from those two periods of time till today, that's exactly what those people are experiencing, which is the only reason there are any sales at all, let alone the low sales that are taking place. You are also getting a relief in your interest rate because the amount of mortgage you have is so much smaller. The total interest that you're paying is ridiculously smaller than what you would have paid 2 and 3 years ago in those two provinces. Your property taxes are also reduced equally. In other words, if you're purchasing a house at 30% off, your property taxes are going to be 30% off in Vancouver. So not only do you have the ridiculously low property taxes that you pay in Vancouver and Toronto, but you also get a discount because you're buying a house that's worth less money. Or you're paying less money. Now, on top of that, you're also buying a higher quality of home at the same time, which is where we get into this discussion of prices always hiding what's actually taking place in a housing market. If you're buying a higher quality of home for the same home buying dollar, your cost to maintain, renovate, and repair that property is going to be reduced. So we always use this scenario, Jim. If you buy a brand new home, the first 12 years that you own it, you really are not going to have any repair, maintenance, or renovation work that's needed in that property. That property is really going to cost you nothing. If you buy a 30-year-old home, you are going to have a high expense every single year that you own it. Because you're already into a home that's into its repair, maintenance, and renovation schedule. In other words, it's older than 12 years old. So every single year, there's things that are going to need to be replaced and repaired. You don't tear it down and build a new house. You just simply, as the things fall apart, you repair them. The roof, you're going to repair it on a 13 to 17 year cycle. The driveway, you're going to repair that on a 20 to 25 year cycle. Your kitchen, you're going to renovate that on a 25 to 35 year cycle. Bathroom's the same. You basically, after a house is 50 years old, the entire house has been replaced, other than maybe the framing walls, because the siding's been torn down, the insulation's been upgraded, the features have all changed. So all of those things should be calculated into your affordability count. But of course, none of the affordability counts do that. They focus solely on a mathematical calculation based on a first-time buyer. But those first-time buyers were only representing 20% of the market, or less, back in 16 and 17, respectively. So for 80% of the population, things have gotten way better in the affordability front. That isn't going to help the listeners who are saying, but Ross, we're looking out here and a condo is still costing us $400,000 to $500,000. I respect that. If you want to buy a home in Beverly Hills, or which in Canada means Vancouver or downtown Toronto, you should expect to pay Beverly Hills prices. If you think that you're going to be able to buy a house in Beverly Hills at hillbilly prices, it is not going to happen. You have to move away. In Vancouver, that means you move out towards the Langley area. In Toronto, that means you move out towards Oakville, Burlington, or the other way, Ajax. The beautiful thing about the Greater Toronto area is you basically have about 260 degrees worth of travel area away from the city center here. Where in Vancouver, you're looking at, maybe 90 degrees of outgrowth that's available when you look at the ocean, the mountains, the American border. You've got to take all these things into consideration. So the affordability for the vast majority of Canadians has improved. but the affordability for first-time buyers has not.
Ross, the question is this now the time to get into the market, or should you wait and see if the prices go down further?
Okay, so getting into the market, timing the market, varies from person to person, Jim. Okay? There are people like you, Jim. There's no problem with you getting into the market now or 2 years ago, or you moving in the market. It makes no difference. Because of the type of property you'd be looking at and your age profile, your how long you've been a homeowner, all of those things work in your favor in terms of not being under any pressure to make a decision. First time buyers, totally different. A buyer on that's making $50,000 a year, a buyer making $100,000 a year, totally different. Those are two totally different buyers. Buyers making the first step in the property ladder or the fourth step in the property ladder, totally different buyers, totally different answers. What I would say is there is no place in Canada today where I would be recommending someone buying a home, because I know tomorrow the property is going to be more affordable. I know that as a housing market slows, the economy slows, the wealth effect caused by a housing market is reduced. It actually goes negative. And I know that a consequence of that is the government is going to have to reduce mortgage interest rates. You know, you're listening now to economists start to talk about the Fed in the States and in Canada, the Bank of Canada, being forced to reduce interest rates. Where on this show back in 2016, we talked about the interest rate trap. We talked about how it was going to be next to impossible for the governments to raise interest rates. So these people, again, are all making commentary that is 2 years behind the curve. They're now jumping on the bandwagon when they missed the wagon when it went by. But they're going to pretend that they know what they're talking about. Now, I'm not saying we know more than what they're talking about. What I'm saying is our view on things is different. How we look at a housing market, the wealth effect, affordability, timing the market is simply different than everyone else. That's why when we say, your original question, Ross, are houses more affordable than they were 2 years ago in Toronto and 3 years ago in Vancouver? And I would say yes, as much as 50% more affordable for the vast majority of the population. For the small minority, 20% or less, and it's even less than that when the real counts are done, no, affordability hasn't changed. But that's like saying, giving your weather report and saying, oh, there is a 30% chance of rain tomorrow. I'm the type of guy who says, wait a second, there's a 70% chance of sun. I'm going to go with the 70%. I'm not going to worry about talking about the 30% the vast majority of the time. When it is raining, or when I'm talking about first-time buyers, I will have a different discussion. But I can't ignore the 80% of the population who's moving up the property ladder instead of starting out.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, what's the number one mortgage mistake Canadians make?
Okay, first of all, Jim, I got to let you know I'm going to have to cut. We're going to have to be shorter with our answers here going forward. I know we've got to end this call. the number one mistake that people make with their mortgages is that they don't align their mortgage payment with their paycheck. Now go out there and try to find that published somewhere, listeners. Find where some bank or lender is instructing you specifically to only make your mortgage payments the same day that you're paid your paycheck. Now, I'm not talking about going bi-weekly in order to justify paying down your mortgage quicker with 2 extra mortgage payments in a year. What I'm saying is structuring your life so that it works in harmony, so that you're never under stress. The biggest mistake first-time buyers make is 12 monthly mortgage payments a year because it doesn't align with their life. You're always budgeting 2 or 3 days or a week apart. How much of my paycheck am I going to put aside this week, or this 2 weeks, so that I can make my mortgage payment in the next 15 days? And the next month, you may have 3 paychecks that come in, and you think that you can spend one of the paychecks because the other 2 are going to make the mortgage payment. It is one of the biggest problems the Canadian banking system has caused with consumers. And I personally believe this, Jim, that the banks did this on purpose right from day one. I believe that for decade after decade after decade, they have directed first-time homebuyers into a monthly payment structure. And this is the number one thing every single first-time buyer in Canada should refuse to do. What you should be doing is you should be making your mortgage payment the same day every 2 weeks that you're paid. If you're paid weekly, you should be making your mortgage payment every week. If you're paid monthly, you should be making your mortgage payment once a month. But we know the vast majority of Canadians are paid bi-weekly. And that is when your mortgage payment is due. But let me take it one step further. If you are currently a tenant and you're renting, and you are renting on a 12-month payment system, like a monthly payment system, your landlord is specifically asking you to do something that is not to your financial advantage. You need to be paying your rent every 2 weeks. You don't need to be giving them 12 checks a year. You need to be giving them 26. And your rent payments need to be made that way. Why? Because then that gives you the opportunity to budget for savings. Maybe you want to budget to fill up your TFSA. Maybe you want to budget so that you can save a down payment on a house. Maybe you want to budget so you can fill up your RRSP. There are lots of ways to build your financial net worth up when you make your payments and your income equal each other, or they're harmonized. They fall on the same days. The moment that you move the dates apart, it creates problems. You have to create a budget. You have to create flexibility. You have to build in some risk reward. Why not just eliminate all that? Just get rid of it. Make your payments, any payments that you make, in harmony with the day that you get your paycheck. This goes for cars. This goes for credit card debt. This goes for any payment that you have to make. If your gas payment or your hydro payment is once a month, don't pay it that way. Pay it weekly. All of these things are possible. When you're getting a mortgage, the number one mistake Canadians make is monthly payments. The number one wealth building tool they can have while holding a mortgage, the number one is simply to make 26 payments a year instead of 12.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Canadian April building permits were up nearly 15%. Is that good news for home buyers?
Building permits are a false stat, Jim. This is another false stat. When you go back and you look at building permits from the first day that data was collected decades ago till today, and then you look at the data on new housing stock that is finally completed, the two numbers never match up. There is a huge irregularity at times, and over decades, the irregularity is regular. What your listeners need to understand is when a builder reports or a city reports that they have a new permit, many builders today have to register the permit in order to source financing. Those permits are never completed on. The building never takes place. The land is flipped. Okay, when the land is flipped, there's new permits issued for that land for the new owner. That's why you have holes where the permit count and the new home that's constructed count over the last 40 years don't line up. What the number that you can look at is starts. You can look at starts. Now, you have to apply a time coefficient on starts to understand how it's going to affect the housing market. But you can look at starts. But if you see anybody in the world talking about housing permits have increased. It's a BS number, folks. You can go and look at the publicly available data on CMHC's website. You can add all the numbers up yourself, and you can see what I'm saying is true. Permits are a false measure of a housing market. Don't listen to them. The builders use them. StatCan uses them. The government uses them. Bank economists use them. And even the real estate associations use them to fool you. Don't believe them.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us this week.
And thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.